So the West Asia war has now been going on for the past 2 weeks, and it is now entering its third week of operations. And it does not look like that there is any sort of end to this conflict. So today I'm going to be discussing whether the United States is actually winning this war or whether Iran is actually winning the war. And spoiler alert, it is actually neither. So firstly, let's get to the main point, why the United States has not won yet. Despite overwhelming conventional superiority in domains like naval forces, air forces, intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, the United States and Israel have not won the war, neither have completed their predetermined objectives. And why that is exactly is because Iran was never actually a conventional opponent at all. The fact that the United States considered it as a conventional opponent was the first mistake, because it is not China. It does not have thousands of aircrafts, hundreds of ships, thousands of tanks you have to fight. It has asymmetric capability. And what do you mean by asymmetric capability? Asymmetric capability means the fact that when you cannot directly compete with someone in a specific domain, you try to raise the cost of them trying to attack you. So in this case, Iran, what it has done is, instead of building a large conventional air force or having a large, navy with a lot of aircraft carriers or something, what they have done is worked upon their drones and missile infrastructure, which is actually really capable. And after in the initial first week or so, the US and its allies were able to repel off the Iranian drone and missile attacks pretty easily, because interceptor stocks existed at that point. But what now people are not realizing is that the United States is no longer an industrial power. So the fact that people expect the US to even remotely win this conflict is kind of impossible in my eyes, because there's only so many interceptor missiles you can fire on until the stockpiles get dangerously low that you cannot defend one of your other theaters. The problem with the United States is that it is engaged in 4 different theaters. So that is Russia, that is China, that is Iran, and that is Venezuela, and then obviously the homeland defense of the place. So the fact that you think you can defend all of these places with a capacity of like 600 to 800 missiles production for the THAAD or the Patriot air defense systems per year is just insane to me, because let's be real that these things are not that easy to produce. It's not like you just say, okay, increase production, so you just hire more men and they just start assembling these components in the line. No, you have to sign long-term contracts for sourcing the materials used in these. Remember, these are not any sort of joke equipment. The Patriot missiles are extremely good, the THAAD missiles are extremely good, but they are also very expensive, and they require a lot of expensive and sophisticated electronics, sophisticated rare earths, which also a lot of the products that the United States does not produce at home. A lot of that is actually imported from China or imported from India or imported from Japan or South Korea. The United States does not own all of its defense supply chains. So the war in a long-term sense is impossible, and the original objectives are set by Donald Trump and his weirdo defense secretary Pete Hegseth. He just comes on camera every single day and just starts acting like this weird kind of nonsense that he does, that we are winning, we destroyed their navy. Okay, of course you destroyed the Iranian navy, but have you completed your objective of regime change? Have you completed your objective of destroying the missile infrastructure? And yes, while they have destroyed a lot of the missile production facilities, and while they have destroyed a lot of launchers for the missiles, because let's be honest, the missiles aren't so much as important as the launchers. If you have a lot of missiles but you don't have launchers to fire them from, they are just useless. You cannot just tilt them in a vertical position and then have them, okay, let's just launch them and they just start taking off like that. No, that's not how it works. But this is something I think that is going to be a big problem, because Iran is not planning to win. It is just trying to delay the conflict to the point where the United States general public is no longer interested in the conflict. Today morning itself, a KC-135 crashed in Iraq or Iraqi Kurdistan. But again, that is not, I don't believe that losing a few aircraft makes you feel that you win. That is some Pakistani logic, if I do say so myself. But losing a few aircraft is important for the US in the sense that it has lost lives in that. You cannot eject from an aerial refueler. It does not have a canopy that is going to just open all of a sudden and just going to push out 5 people from the canopy. That's not how it works. But once the rising human costs arises in the United States, that's when they finally pull the plug on it. That's when the Congress will decide, okay, it's enough, we have to get out of here. And then we are going to get on the fact that the consideration that you can do regime change through solely air and naval bombardment. I mean, when has that ever worked? If we take the example of Afghanistan, if we take the example of Iraq, if we take the example of Syria, if we take the example of Libya, you always had to send ground forces. In Iraq, if you did not send ground forces, do you think that the Baathists would have capitulated? No, you sent ground forces, you sent armored divisions that went inside and personally hunted Saddam Hussein. And in the case of Afghanistan, it was even worse, because Afghanistan was as is a broken country. You went in and you tried to hunt a few tribal men who just blend in into the crowd. You are not fighting any uniformed force there. And the Afghans have defeated the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union before. So you lost there as well. 20 years you stayed on there. You never had a set objective. You were just trying to fix a country that did not want to fall into what you were planning to do in there. So I think that they are repeating the same Afghanistan mistake here without the ground invasion, in the sense that you have objectives changing every single day. Now, I do not doubt the capabilities of the United States Armed Forces. They are definitely the most powerful on earth. There is no question about that. But until you have an industrial power to support a strong armed forces, rather than having literal components for your missiles being imported from your own adversary, I don't think anybody has ever won a war in that scenario, that your own adversary, if China wants, they can put the plug on their exports. But obviously China isn't going to do that, because then their oil supplies get threatened, and that's why this has not happened till now. So in a sense, who is actually winning the conflict? The answer is that no specific, none of these three countries, US, Israel or Iran, they're actually winning the conflict. And especially after Hezbollah and other proxies were dragged into the conflict. The Houthis have not jumped in yet, but the moment they jump in, that you have to spare naval resources to free up the Red Sea. So that is another problem. And then I'm going to talk about the fact of the information warfare. So from the United States side, surprisingly, there has been a lot of information warfare. They have posted videos of what they are conducting the strikes in Iran. And that is, I think, India should learn from that aspect, because that is exactly where we collapsed during Operation Sindoor last year, that we had a very huge victory on the ground. But the way international media framed it, the way international media openly sided with Pakistani propaganda, it made us seem like we lost the conflict, even when we achieved our objectives and we ended the war on time. But the fact that the United States has put a hold on satellite imagery from the Gulf area for 96 hours, that is again something that raises eyebrows. The fact that the aircraft carriers are no longer present near the Hormuz Strait, but they have been pulled farther back. And now they're planning of sending a third or fourth aircraft carrier in the region. I mean, if it was that decisive of a victory, why couldn't you just clear up the Hormuz Strait by now? Why aren't merchant ships clearing away? Because what the United States want is countries like India or Japan to send their ships to clear up their mess. It is the United States that opened this Pandora's box, and now they want other countries to clean up their mess. They are not able to dedicate naval assets to the Strait of Hormuz so that they can clear areas for merchant ships. And now I think right now the reason they are doing that is because the oil supplies and gas supplies are not directly affecting the United States so much. But the moment that begins to happen, that is when they are going to come, and that is when they are going to start clearing the ships. And obviously that is going to be risky because of the fact that Iran has unmanned underwater vehicles which run very fast, and they are pretty difficult to hunt. And even if you do manage to hunt them, it is a very huge asymmetric warfare, in the sense that the UUVs cost a few $100,000 and your anti-submarine warfare rockets cost a few million. It is in that sense that Iran is going to indeed stretch this conflict and keep it in a stalemate of a sense. And then I'm going to talk about the fact that neither of the Gulf countries have joined yet in the conflict they have been allowing the US to use their bases, but neither of them have used their own armed forces, neither of them has used sanctions against the Iranian regime. That showcases that the Gulf allies themselves are not happy with how this conflict has ended. They did not want to have Shahed drones landing on financial buildings in Dubai or something. That is going to scare their expatriate populations. The fact that this war happened, it is going to destroy the notion that Dubai is an extremely safe city. And while they have conducted interceptions and all that, they have put like some extreme fines on people recording the clips, so you don't even get access to what is actually going on in the UAE or what is going on in Saudi Arabia. So at this point, it is really difficult to really get good open source intelligence and good information from the conflict without drifting into a narrative war from either side. And that is what made this conflict so difficult to analyze for non-aligned analysts like myself, or a lot of people. Honestly, I know there are a lot of people biased towards one side or the other, but I just like to look at it at a perspective of, okay, what's next. But right now, what I see next in this conflict is that it is a never-ending conflict, and unless both the sides drop their ego and decide that, okay, it's time to stop, the world is suffering, it is not going to stop. The US cannot complete its so-called regime change objective until and unless they put boots on the ground, and that is the truth. You cannot do a regime change with bombings. You cannot make 90 million people capitulate to you. And today morning I was reading on Reuters that apparently some classified US officials have told them that they did not expect Iran to not capitulate, and they did not expect that people would not come on the streets and remove the regime themselves. I mean, no shit, Sherlock. I mean, again, I do not trust websites like Reuters. They run anti-India propaganda all the time. And again, somehow these people just randomly make up stories with anonymous intelligence officials. That is something I just never get. These are just not even media websites. These are intelligence planting sources who, whichever pays them more, they just post that story. And that is why we see a lot of anti-India rhetoric on these sites as well. So I'm not going to say whether the report is true or not, but the fact that this conflict has dragged on for 2 weeks was pretty expected from my side. I have made 3 videos about this conflict up till now. I even made a video on how Trump could not win this war in Iran, and more or less my analysis has been going on correct. So that is all I had to say in this video. I don't even know what I was saying the entire video. I was just analyzing whatever I had analyzed over the past few days or 2 weeks. I was just yapping about it without any proper structure. I don't script my videos at all, so that is probably the reason it sounds more like a rant to people than sounds like analysis, because I don't like to script specific parts. I just like to be raw in what I actually feel about. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'm going to make a video soon on how is whether India prepared for a conflict like this if it rings on its doorbells. So be sure to subscribe to see that video, and I shall see you all in the next video. Take care and Jai Hind.